Hello and welcome to this Monday edition of the World Report. I'm Arjun, Samar, Mahendran. Let's take a look at what's making headlines around the world. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has publicly endorsed the U.S. strategy of imposing tariffs on countries that continue to trade with Russia, describing it as the right idea, in his words. Now remember, India faces 50% tariffs, of which 25% was in fact imposed by Donald Trump first, followed by an additional 25% penalty for New Delhi for Russia's oil purchases. My colleague Mohammad Ghazali joins us for more on this. Ghazali, what's the latest between this flip-flop you're seeing from Zelenskyy? Is he putting all his stones in the same basket and probably hoping that Donald Trump does not turn on him like he has been turning on his allies? You take India, the latest example we have is Japan, where the Prime Minister, in fact, Shiba, had to resign after striking that trade deal with the U.S. What's the latest you're picking up, Ghazali?
See, Mr. Zelenskyy has been knocking the U.S. doors for very long to achieve a ceasefire with Russia, but that has not yielded any results. Even when Mr. Putin invited Mr. Zelenskyy to Moscow for talks, Mr. Zelenskyy has rubbished it, saying that it doesn't look like Mr. Putin is serious for talks. And just last month, Mr. Zelenskyy had spoken to Prime Minister Modi twice, and on both occasions he had discussed the outcome of the or to find a way out to halt this war with Russia, and also sort of requested India to show its influence or use its influence to ask Russia not to continue with this war. But see, it seems all that has fallen for him. Nothing seems to be working for Mr. Zelenskyy, where Ukraine had faced deadly attacks just day before yesterday from Russia, and it now appears as if that he is done with it, and he sees that India has great influence or potential to influence Mr. Putin to halt the war, to at least stop this aggression. And that is why, out of frustration perhaps, he has agreed that even sanctions could be used to pressure both Russia and India to halt this war.
Out of frustration, perhaps, Ghazali, thank you so much for getting us the latest on this developing story. Something, of course, we'll keep on following here on the World Report. Meanwhile, shifting our focus to Washington, where U.S. President Donald Trump says he is ready for second phase of sanctions against Russia. Now, the move is being seen by experts as a failure of the recently concluded Alaska summit. Trump has repeatedly threatened Moscow with further sanctions, but has withheld them as he's pursued talks till now. Meanwhile, experts say and opine that Trump has been frustrated as there is no halt to the fighting in Ukraine after he initially predicted he would be able to end the war swiftly when he took office on the 20th of January. Listen into Trump, followed by my colleague Vishal Vivek, who unpacks the latest.
Are you ready to move to the second phase of sanctions against Russia or punishing Putin?
How was your call with the Prime Minister of Australia?
Are you ready to move to the second phase of sanctions against Russia or punishing Putin?
How was your call with the Prime Minister of Australia?
So, no, I am not thrilled with what's happening there, I will tell you. I think it's going to get settled. So I settled 7 wars. This, I would have said, would have been maybe the easiest one to settle of all. But with war, you never know what you're getting. But we're going to get it, I believe we're going to get it settled. But I am not happy with them. I'm not happy with anything having to do with that war. It's just such a waste of great humanity.
Alaska summit that happened a few weeks ago, that seems to have failed totally. It was high on optics, but low on delivery. That's been proven through these statements by, Donald Trump, in which he clearly, signaled that there would be secondary sanctions, there would be another round of sanctions on Russia. To your question of what those could entail, so we have seen in the recent past that Russia's oil trade has been targeted by the West and its allies quite heavily. So it is expected that that would continue. There would be further sanctions on Russia. There's a shadow fleet of Russia that operates across the globe and that has been able to sustain the Russian economy in the times of war. So that shadow fleet could be the next target. Some of the, a part of the fleet is already under target. So we could see bigger sanctions on that so-called shadow fleet. But all of that will have to be seen. But for the moment, as you rightly mentioned, Alaska summit in itself seems to have failed because it was billed as something, as an inflection point in the big Russia-Ukraine war. It's been almost 3.5 years now, or probably over 1 million people have been killed in the war. So it was billed as something that would sort of, be the next step in, bringing the war to an end. But that doesn't seem to be the case, because Trump, as reports have mentioned, that he's quite annoyed with Russian President Putin because his repeated attempts have failed. He has, said when he walked into the White House for the second time that he would bring an end to the conflict within a day. And it's been more than 6 months now, and that has not happened. So Trump seems to be riled up, and he's ready to put more sanctions on Russia.
We keep with the U.S. where White House tariff advisor Peter Navarro has had a meltdown after one of his posts targeting India's Russian oil purchases was flagged with a community note on social media platform X. Now, yet again, viewers, Peter Navarro accused India of trading with Russia, in his words, purely to profit, revenue feed Russia's war machine. But this time, X users fact-checked Navarro, pointing out that India's oil imports were largely for energy security and not for just profit, as he claims, and also that they did not violate any international sanctions. Now, the note further highlighted that while India imposes some tariffs, the US actually runs a trade surplus with New Delhi in services and in fact continues to import certain commodities from Russia itself, calling Navarro's stance hypocritical. Now, fuming at the pushback, Navarro dismissed the note as crap and lashed out at CEO Elon Musk for letting propaganda into people's posts. Musk, however, did not directly respond to Navarro, nor did he name him in the post. But he posted saying, "On this platform, the people decide the narrative. Community notes corrects everyone, no exceptions." External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is set to join a virtual BRICS summit today on the 8th of September, hosted by Brazilian President Lula da Silva. Now, top of the agenda will be U.S. tariffs imposed by Donald Trump, which have triggered fresh tensions across emerging markets. The meeting follows a high-level huddle just last week between leaders of China, Russia and India, the Troika as it's called, in China's Tianjin. While Jaishankar represents India at BRICS, the government has also stressed the strength of India-US ties, calling them strategic and resilient. With tariffs soaring more than 50% on some BRICS exports, today's summit aims to find common ground, but also avoids framing it as an anti-US grouping. Now, from safe, clean environment to medical care and other essential amenities, the Ministry of Home Affairs has assured Belgium that Mehul Choksi's rights will be protected if he is extradited to India. It's detailed specific material, medical and procedural safeguards as well. Now, these assurances were formulated in consultation with the Maharashtra government to ensure that Choksi's rights are protected while complying with extradition protocols. We shift our focus to the Middle East, where to the fourth visit by any Israeli minister to India this year, Israel's finance minister Bezalel Smotrich is in India leading a high-level economic delegation to boost ties between the two nations. Over the next 3 days, Smotrich will meet top Indian officials. These also include Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and Commerce and Industries Minister Piyush Goyal. Now, Smotrich's team includes top Israeli financial leaders, and meetings are set to take place not only in New Delhi but also in Mumbai and Gujarat as well. India and Israel, for perspective, already share $4 billion in annual revenue, and this visit is designed to take that relationship to the next level. U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday gave what he declared was his last warning to Hamas to agree to his terms for ending the Middle East war. He also added that Israel has accepted his proposed ceasefire and hostage release agreement. However, the message sent in a social media post doesn't specify or specifically tell us what those terms are or might be. I have warned Hamas about the consequences of not accepting. This is my last warning. There will be no other one, Trump asserted. Now, he also issued a similar ultimatum before threatening Hamas will have in fact hell to pay in a March post that also claimed it was his last warning to the militant group. Over in Western Europe, France risks losing its third prime minister in only 12 months on Monday, with incumbent François Bayrou facing a parliamentary no-confidence vote, heralding more political and financial instability for the European Union's second largest economy. The 74-year-old centrist Prime Minister appointed by President Emmanuel Macron just under 9 months ago is gambling that the vote will federate lawmakers in a sharply divided National Assembly behind proposed public spending cuts that Bayrou himself argues are needed to rein in France's spiraling state deficit and also its peaking debts. Here more.
French lawmakers are gathering to decide the fate of France's Prime Minister, here in the National Assembly building in Paris. If toppled by a confidence vote, François Bayrou will become the third Prime Minister to fall in 12 months. All of this instability in Europe's second largest economy flows from a stunning decision that President Emmanuel Macron took last year. By dissolving the National Assembly, triggering fresh legislative elections, Macron took a roll of the political dice. He hoped that his party would emerge strengthened, but instead the electorate punished him, voting in a sharply divided assembly where no one group has power. All of this has left Macron's prime ministers and their governments on shaky ground without a stable majority. Bayrou's widely expected demise will force Macron to begin another and likely difficult hunt for a new prime minister. But the person that Macron chooses will inherit the same problems that ultimately have defeated Bayrou. Top of the pile is the worsening state of France's finances, its public deficit and its massive debts. Finding consensus solutions when lawmakers are so bitterly divided ultimately proved impossible and is unlikely to be any easier for Bayrou's successors. Macron, unable to turn France around, risks looking increasingly powerless as the clock counts down to the end of his presidency in 2027.
Argentine President Javier Milei suffered a sweeping setback on Sunday in the Buenos Aires provincial election, widely viewed as a political test for his Libertarian Party and barometer for how it will perform in the crucial congressional midterms only due next month. Now, Milei's recently formed La Libertad Avanza party captured just 34% of the votes in Argentina's biggest province, losing by a landslide to the left-leaning Peronist opposition, which secured a whopping 47%, with majority of ballots counted late Sunday. Now, Milei conceded that his right-wing party's crushing 13-point loss to his populist rivals represented a clear defeat. News from the land down under, where an Australian judge on Monday sentenced triple murder Erin Patterson to life in prison with a non-parole period of 33 years. This for poisoning 4 of her estranged husband's relatives with death cap mushrooms. That's right, Justice Christopher Bale told the court that Victoria State Supreme Court Patterson's crimes involved an enormous betrayal of trust. Patterson was convicted in July of murdering Dawn and Gail Patterson and Gail's sister Heather Wilkinson with a lunch of beef Wellington pastries laced with foraged death cap mushrooms. Here's more.
Erin Patterson, after a long trial during which you gave evidence that the poisoning of your 4 lunch guests on the 29th of July was an accident, the jury found you guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. In other words, the jury necessarily found that you deliberately served poison meals to Gail and Don Patterson and Heather and Ian Wilkinson, and that you did so intending to kill them. Only Ian Wilkinson survived. The maximum penalty for murder is life imprisonment, and for attempted murder, 25 years imprisonment. Murder is also a standard sentence offence, and the standard sentence offence for murder is 25 years imprisonment. The prosecution submits, and your counsel concedes, that your offending falls into the worst category of offending for these offences, and that you should receive the maximum penalties for your crimes. I agree.
A trial opened in New Zealand on Monday for a woman accused of murdering her 2 children and leaving their bodies in suitcases for years together before they were eventually discovered. Ha Kyung Lee is charged with killing 6-year-old Minu Zhou and 8-year-old Yuna Zhou in June 2018. She was extradited from South Korea to face the charges, which she vehemently still denies. The children's remains were found in luggage at an abandoned storage unit near Auckland, New Zealand in August 2022. Listen in.
I'll give you directions, as I say, on the law, and you'll have to apply those directions, but ultimately it's for you to decide on the facts, in light of those directions, whether Ms Lee is guilty or not guilty of the charges she faces. In this case, it's likely you'll also need to determine whether at the time the children were killed, Ms Lee was insane, as that is defined in our Crimes Act. And I'll have more to say about that later as the case progresses.
Over in Southeast Asia, Hong Kong received heavy rain and wind Monday as tropical storm Tapah also affected nearby mainland China. Now, China's hub of Guangdong province near Hong Kong halted some train and ferry services ahead of the storm, according to Hong Kong's state media. Now, Hong Kong's observatory raised its number 8 storm signal on Sunday evening, the third highest in the city's weather system. For perspective, it says Tapah was packing maximum sustained winds near the center of about 68 miles per hour at 9 a.m. local time. The financial hub, in fact, also saw about 100 flights being cancelled, with some travelers sleeping on chairs as they were forced to wait for travel information at the airport itself. Well, it's time we step into a short break. Much more on the other side. Don't you go anywhere. Month double its earlier projection of a 25 BP reduction. Now, this follows a soft August jobs report. Meanwhile, data on Friday showed U.S. job growth weakened sharply in August, and the unemployment rate also, in fact, rose up to a near 4-year high of 4.3%, confirming a softening labour market and bolstering the case for rate cuts this month itself. Now, in a client note on Friday, the brokerage said that the labour market had shifted from solid to soft in less than 6 weeks.